Jake Murphy sat in the communications room of the research ship Stellar Dawn. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. He wore his usual blue uniform and had a cup of coffee next to his workstation. It was just another normal day in space, or so he thought. The first sign that something was wrong came at 14:32 ship time. A strange signal appeared on his screen. It was weak and broken, like someone trying to talk through static. Jake had been working communications for 8 years, and he had never heard anything like this before. He turned up the volume and listened carefully. The signal was not coming from any human ship. It was not coming from any known alien species either. The sounds were strange and musical, but underneath the music, Jake could hear something that made his stomach feel cold. Fear. Pure, terrible fear. Jake called his captain right away. Captain Ryan Blake was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been in space for 20 years and had seen many strange things, but when he heard the signal, his face went pale. "Get Dr. Chun up here right now," Blake ordered, "and patch this signal through to Earth Defense Command." Dr. Lisa Chun was the ship's expert on alien languages. She was a small woman with dark hair who could speak 12 different alien languages. When she heard the signal, she immediately went to work. Her fingers moved quickly across her computer as she tried to understand what the aliens were saying. "It's a distress call," she said after 10 minutes of work. "But it's like nothing I've ever heard before. The language is completely new to me. Give me some time and I might be able to figure out more." Captain Blake nodded and walked to the bridge. He looked out at the stars and wondered what kind of trouble they had found. In space, a distress call usually meant someone was dying. Hours passed. Dr. Chun worked without stopping, drinking coffee and eating protein bars. Jake stayed at his station, making sure the signal stayed clear. Captain Blake paced the bridge, waiting for news. Finally, at 21:15, Dr. Chun made a breakthrough. Her voice shook as she called the captain. "I've got most of it translated," she said. "Captain, you need to hear this." The bridge crew gathered around as Dr. Chun played the translated message. Her computer had changed the alien words into English, but the fear in the voice was still clear. "This is the Villani research vessel Harmony Song. We are sending this message to anyone who can hear us. Our home system is under attack by machines we cannot stop. They eat planets and turn everything into more of themselves. We call them the Devourers." The voice paused, and they could hear other voices in the background, some crying, some shouting orders. "Our homeworld has 3 billion people. The machines will reach us in 4 days. Our weapons do nothing to them. Our shields break like paper. We have tried everything we know, but we are not a warrior species. We are explorers and artists and teachers." Another pause. When the voice came back, it was quieter, sadder. "We know that no one can reach us in time. We know we are going to die. But please, if anyone hears this message, remember us. Remember that we tried to be good. Remember that we loved our children and our art and our music. Remember the Villani. That is all we ask." The message ended. The bridge was silent for a long moment. "How far away are they?" Captain Blake asked. Jake checked his instruments. 6 days at maximum speed, sir." Blake closed his eyes. 6 days. The aliens said they had 4 days left. Even if they left right now, they would be too late. "Send the message to Earth Defense Command with our full analysis," Blake ordered. "Mark it as highest priority." On Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison received the message in her office at Defense Command. She was a tough woman who had been in the military for 30 years. She had fought in 3 wars and had seen terrible things. But when she heard the Villani message, she felt something break inside her chest. Morrison called an emergency meeting with her staff. The room filled with officers and scientists, all looking worried. How long would it take to get a fleet to the Villani system? Morrison asked. Her tactical officer, Commander Paul Green, checked his computer. "Our nearest battle group is 6 days away at maximum burn. Even if we stripped every fast ship we have, we couldn't get there in less than 5 days. So we'd be too late." "Yes, ma'am, by at least a day, maybe 2. Morrison stared at the star chart on the wall. She thought about her grandfather, who had fought in World War II. He used to tell her stories about how people would risk everything to save strangers. He said that's what made humans different from animals. Animals only saved their own families. Humans saved anyone who needed help. "Ma'am," said Dr. James Davis, the chief scientist, "even if we could get there in time, what could we do? We don't know anything about these devourers. They might be too powerful for us to fight." Morrison looked around the room at all the worried faces. She knew they were right. It was probably a suicide mission. Any ships they sent would likely be destroyed. But she also knew something else. If they didn't try, she would never be able to look at herself in the mirror again. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," Morrison said. "All available ships are to prepare for immediate departure to the Villani system. We're going to help them, ma'am," Commander Green said carefully. "With respect, we can't save them. We'll be too late." Morrison stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of the city where millions of people lived their normal lives. Safe people who could sleep at night because others were willing to fight for them. "Maybe we can't save them all," she said, "but we can try. And, if we get there too late, at least the Villani won't die alone. At least someone will be there to remember them and tell their story." She turned back to face her officers. "Send the order. All ships prepare for departure. We answer the call." The news about the Villani crisis spread across human space faster than anyone expected. Within 2 hours of Admiral Morrison's order, every human colony, space station, and ship had received the message. What happened next surprised everyone, including the humans themselves. Captain Steve Rodriguez was loading cargo on his merchant ship Good Fortune when the message came through. He was a simple man who hauled supplies between colonies. His ship was old but well-maintained, and he was proud of the honest work he did. When he heard about the Villani, he stopped what he was doing and called his wife. Maria Rodriguez was the ship's engineer. She was small but strong, with hands that could fix any machine. She and Steve had been married for 20 years and had twin children, Alex and Sophie, both 17 years old. The family lived and worked together on their ship. "Did you hear the message?" Steve asked Maria. "Yes," she said. "Those poor people. 3 billion of them." Steve looked out at the stars. "We could help." Maria was quiet for a moment. She knew what her husband was thinking. Their ship was not built for war. It had basic shields and no weapons. If they went to help the Villani, they might never come home. "The kids," she said softly. "I know, but what kind of world are we leaving them if we don't help people who need it?" That evening, the Rodriguez family sat around their small dinner table. Steve and Maria explained the situation to Alex and Sophie. The twins listened carefully, asking questions about the Villani and the machines that were attacking them. "So if we go," Alex said, "we might die." "Yes," Steve said honestly. "We might," Sophie, who was usually the quiet one, spoke up. "But if we don't go, all those people will definitely die." "That's right," Maria said. The family voted. It was unanimous. They would go, but the Rodriguez family was not alone. All across human space, other families were having the same conversation. Cargo ships, passenger liners, mining vessels, even luxury yachts began changing course toward rally points. The military had expected maybe 50 civilian ships to volunteer. Instead, over 2,000 civilian vessels reported ready for departure. Commander Lisa Park commanded a squadron of fast attack corvettes. These were small, quick ships designed for patrol duty. They had good engines and decent weapons, but they were not built to fight huge battles. When she received her orders to head for Villani space, she knew she was taking her crews on a one-way trip. Lisa called her squadron together for a meeting. 12 ship captains appeared on her screen, men and women from all over human space. She looked at their faces and saw the same thing in all of them: fear, but also determination. "You all know where we're going," she said. "You all know the odds. If anyone wants to stay behind, now is the time to say so. No one will think less of you." Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Tony Shaw, the gunner on the Corvette Lightning, raised his hand. "Commander, I have a question." "Go ahead, Tony." "If we don't go, who will?" Lisa smiled sadly. "Good question. Anyone else want to stay behind? No one did. Meanwhile, on the alien space station New Harmony, the other species of the Galactic Council watched the human response with confusion. The station was a beautiful place where different alien species met to discuss trade and politics. The council had been peaceful for 300 years. Ambassador XT of the Xanthari was a tall, thin alien with 4 arms and logical mind. His species always made decisions based on mathematics and probability. He could not understand what the humans were doing. The probability of success is less than 12%, he told the council. The humans will lose most of their fleet. Why would they sacrifice so many ships for a species they have never met? The other aliens nodded in agreement. The furry Coltons, the crystal-bodied Nexari, and the gas-based Flothans all agreed that the human response made no sense. Human Ambassador John Carter stood up to respond. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been representing Earth for 5 years and had learned to speak carefully to the aliens. Ambassador XT, John said, you are right about the mathematics. We will probably lose many ships. We might lose them all. Then why go? XT asked. John was quiet for a moment. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, about his grandson, who was learning to walk. He thought about all the humans who were risking everything for strangers. Because that's what people do, he said finally. When someone is in trouble, you help them. You don't ask if you know them. You don't calculate the odds, you just help. The alien council was silent. They had never heard anything like this before. Back in human space, the fleet was growing larger every hour. Admiral Morrison watched the reports with amazement. She had expected maybe 300 ships. Instead, over 4,000 vessels had answered the call. Military ships, civilian ships, even some very old ships that should have been scrapped years ago. The good fortune arrived at Rally Point Charlie along with 200 other civilian ships. Steve Rodriguez looked out at the massive fleet assembling around them. He had never seen so many human ships in one place. Look at that, Maria said, pointing to a luxury yacht that had been hastily fitted with extra shields. The Peterson family. They're worth millions, and they're here. Look at that one, Sophie said, pointing to an old mining ship covered in patches and repairs. I bet they're not worth much money, but they're here too. Alex was studying the ship roster on his computer. Dad, there are people here from every human colony. Rich people, poor people, young people, old people, everyone. Steve nodded. When it matters, we're all the same. The fleet finished assembling 2 days later. Admiral Morrison addressed the entire force from her flagship, the USS Liberty. Her message was broadcast to over 4,000 ships carrying more than 2 million people. We are about to attempt something that many will call impossible, she said. We are going to fly into a battle we cannot win to save people we have never met. Some of you will not come home. Some of your friends will not come home. But we go anyway, because that is who we are. She paused and looked out at the sea of ships surrounding her. The Villani sent a message to anyone who could hear. They asked to be remembered. We are going to do better than remember them. We are going to save them. All ships, prepare for jump. We answer the call. 4,000 ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying the hopes and dreams of humanity toward a distant star where 3 billion people waited to die. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Villani system. What they saw made everyone go silent. The outer planets were gone, not destroyed but eaten. In their place were massive mechanical structures that looked like metal. Spiders the size of cities. These were the DEVOURARS. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty and watched the nightmare unfold on her screens. The machines moved with perfect coordination, breaking apart asteroids and moons to build more of themselves. Each devourer was bigger than any ship humanity had ever built. How many? She asked her tactical officer. Over 3,000 confirmed. Ma'am, more being built every minute. Morrison felt her heart sink. 3,000 machines, each one larger and more advanced than anything in the human fleet. The mathematics were simple and terrible. Ma'am, her communications officer called. Out. We're receiving a signal from the Villani homeworld. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was musical but filled with despair. It was translated by their computers into English. Unknown vessels, this is Prime Resonance Kelvang of the Villani. You must leave immediately. The Devourers will destroy you. We thank you for coming, but you cannot save us. Please go before you die with us. Morrison picked up her microphone. Prime Resonance Kelvang, this is Admiral Morrison of the Human Defense Fleet. We didn't come here to leave. We came here to fight. There was a long pause. Then the Villani voice came back, filled with wonder. Human, but your species is young. Why do you risk yourselves for us? Because no one should die alone, Morrison said simply. She turned to her fleet commanders. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We're splitting into 3 groups. Battle. Group Alpha will engage the main Devourer concentration. Rescue Group Beta will evacuate as many Villani as possible. Strike Group Gamma will try to reach the homeworld. Good luck, everyone, Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the rescue ships. Her group had mostly civilian vessels with extra shields and cargo space. Their job was to get close to Villani ships and pick up survivors. It was dangerous work, but someone had to do it. All rescue ships, follow my lead. Elena broadcast. We're going in fast and low. Get as many people as you can and get out. The Good Fortune was part of the rescue group. Steve Rodriguez gripped his controls as they flew toward a cluster of beautiful Villani ships. The alien vessels looked like flying crystals, elegant and graceful. But they were being torn apart by smaller Devourer machines. Maria, get those shields. Ready? Steve called to his wife. Already on it, Maria replied from the engine room. Kids, help me reroute power. Alex and Sophie worked alongside their mother, their young hands moving quickly over the controls. They were scared, but they had a job to do. The Good Fortune reached the first Villani ship just as a Devourer machine cut through its hull. Hundreds of Villani floated in space, their atmosphere suits keeping them alive but not for long. Beginning rescue operations, Steve announced. He flew his ship close to the survivors, using the cargo bay to scoop them up. The Villani were small, graceful beings that looked like they were made of living crystal. They moved like dancers even in the zero gravity of space. As they came aboard the Good Fortune, they touched the walls gently and hummed soft songs of gratitude, but the rescue operation did not go unnoticed. 3 Devourer machines turned toward the Good Fortune, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Incoming! Alex shouted from his sensor station. Steve pushed his ship's engines to maximum power, but he knew they were not fast enough. The Devourers were closing in. Then Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim and her 6 corvettes appeared between the Good Fortune and the enemy machines. Her small ships fired everything they had at the Devourers while broadcasting human music at maximum volume. War songs, rock and roll, classical symphonies, all mixed together in a chaotic noise. This is Kim, she called over the radio. All civilian ships, keep working, we'll hold them off. Sarah's corvettes danced around the massive Devourer machines, like insects attacking elephants. Their weapons did little damage, but they were fast and unpredictable. The machines, programmed to fight logical alien tactics, struggled to target the wildly maneuvering human ships. Why are they playing music? Sophie asked her father. To confuse the machines, Steve replied, and to let them know we're not afraid. 1. By 1, Sarah's corvettes were destroyed. But their sacrifice bought time for the civilian ships to rescue thousands of Villani survivors. When the last corvette exploded, Sarah's final transmission was clear and strong. Remember us? She said. Then she was gone. Meanwhile, Battle Group Alpha engaged the main Devourer force. Admiral Morrison led from the front, her battleships firing everything they had at the massive machines. The first exchange revealed the horrible truth about their enemy. Human weapons barely scratched the Devourer hulls. Their shields were beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. But the Devourers returned fire cut through human ships like they were made of paper dot in the first 10 minutes of battle. Humanity lost 50 ships, but something strange happened. The surviving human vessels did not retreat. They did not try to fight logically. Instead, they attacked with fury and desperation. Captain Michelle Lee commanded the destroyer Valiant. When her weapons ran out of ammunition, she did something no alien would ever consider. She aimed her ship directly at a Devourer mothership and pushed her engines to maximum. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed," she announced to her crew. "It's been an honor serving with you." The Valiant crashed into the Devourer at tremendous speed. The explosion was visible from across the system. When the light faded, the Devourer mothership was gone, and 12 smaller machines had been destroyed in the chain reaction. The battle raged for hours. Human ships died by the dozens, but they fought with a ferocity that seemed to confuse the machines. Devourer formations, designed to counter careful alien tactics, found themselves struggling against human unpredictability on the bridge of a Villani command ship. Prime Resonance Kelving watched the battle with amazement. Her people were artists and explorers. They had never seen anything like the way humans fought. "They fight like chaos itself," she said to her aide. "Beautiful and terrible. They know they cannot win, but they do not stop." One of her officers looked up from his instruments. "Prime Resonance, the humans have saved 40% of our evacuation ships. But they are losing so many of their own." Kelving watched another human ship sacrifice itself to save a Villani transport. The human ship was small and old, probably a civilian vessel. But its crew died with the same courage as any warrior. "Send a message to all human ships," she ordered. "Tell them we will remember. Tell them we will always remember." As the battle continued, it became clear that humanity could not win, but they had done something else. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to fight for others. They had shown that some things were worth dying for. And in the depths of space, the Devourer machines began to encounter something they had never faced before. An enemy that refused to surrender even when victory was impossible. The battle had been going on for 12 hours. Admiral Morrison looked at her tactical display with a heavy heart. The numbers were terrible. Of the 4,000 ships that had answered the call, fewer than 800 were still fighting. The rest were either destroyed or badly damaged, but the humans refused to give up. Every ship that could still move continued to fight. Every weapon that could still fire kept shooting. The Devourers had never faced an enemy like this before. Captain Ben Harper commanded the USS Defiance, leading Strike Group Gamma toward the Villani homeworld. His mission was to evacuate civilians from the planet's surface before the Devourers reached them. It was a race against time, and he was losing. The planet below them was beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, and cities that sparkled like jewels. But the Devourers were already at work. Massive mining machines, each one the size of a mountain, were cutting through the planet's crust. They were eating the world from the inside out. "Take us into the atmosphere," Harper ordered his pilot. "Find the evacuation sites." The Defiance and her escort ships dove through the clouds. Below them, they could see the underground cities where the Villani had taken shelter. Millions of people were trying to reach the surface, but the tunnels were collapsing as the mining machines cut deeper. Harper's ground teams, led by Sergeant Rick Johnson, landed at the main evacuation point. Johnson was a tough soldier who had seen action on 3 different worlds. But nothing had prepared him for this. The Villani civilians were not like human refugees. They did not push or fight for space. Instead, they moved in orderly groups, helping the weak and carrying the young. Even facing death, they remained gentle and kind. "How many do we need to evacuate?" Johnson asked the Villani coordinator, a graceful being named Harmony of Stars. 40,000 children are still in the deep shelters," Harmony of Stars replied, through her translator. "The tunnels are failing, but we cannot abandon them." Johnson looked at his squad of 20 soldiers. 40,000 children, and the tunnels were collapsing. It was impossible. But he had learned something about impossible things during this mission. "We'll get them out," he promised. Johnson's squad split up to cover the main tunnel entrances. The mining machines were getting closer, and the ground shook with each massive drill. Rocks fell from the ceiling, and the air filled with dust. For 6 hours, Johnson and his men held the tunnels open while Villani children streamed toward the surface. The soldiers used their weapons to blast away fallen rocks and their engineering tools to shore up collapsing passages. When their equipment broke, they used their hands. Private Danny Wilson, barely 20 years old, stayed at his post even when a tunnel support beam fell on his leg. He kept directing children toward safety while his broken bones sent waves of pain through his body. "Get out of here, Wilson," Johnson ordered over the radio. "Not until the last kid is safe, Sarge," Wilson replied. Johnson smiled grimly. That was the human way. Stay until the job was done. Above ground, the space battle was reaching its final phase. Admiral Morrison realized the awful truth about their situation. The mathematics were clear and brutal. They could save maybe 20% of the Villani population, but only if the entire human fleet sacrificed itself. She opened a channel to all remaining ships. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We all knew this was a one-way trip when we started. The question now is how many lives we can save before we're gone. I'm ordering Operation Last Stand. Every ship fights until it can't fight anymore. Make every shot count. Make every life we save count. Show the galaxy what humanity stands for. The response from the fleet was immediate. Ship after ship acknowledged the order, their captains speaking calmly, even though they were ordering their own deaths. Understood, Admiral. The cargo ship Happy Days will continue evacuation until the end. Copy that, Command. The corvette Lightning will keep fighting. Roger, Admiral. The luxury yacht Starlight will protect the refugee ships. Each acknowledgement was the same. Calm, determined, ready to die for strangers. On the surface of the Villani homeworld, the last evacuation ships were taking off. Sergeant Johnson and his squad had saved 38,000 children, but the tunnels were finally collapsing completely. There was no way out for the soldiers. Johnson gathered his squad around him as the ground shook and the ceiling began to fall. His men looked scared but determined. They had done their job? Any regrets? Johnson asked his squad. Private Wilson, still limping from his broken leg, managed to smile. Only that we can't save more of them, Sarge. Same here, said Corporal Janet Rivers. These people didn't deserve this. The tunnel collapsed with a roar of falling rock. Johnson's last transmission was heard across the fleet. 40,000. Kids safe and sound, worth it. In space, the final act of the battle was beginning. Dr. Lisa Shun, now aboard a refugee ship filled with Villani survivors, had been working on a desperate project. She had been studying the Devour communication signals, trying to understand how they coordinated their attacks. What she found changed everything. Admiral Morrison, she called over the radio. I've found something. The Devourers aren't independent machines. They're all controlled by a single intelligence? Where? Morrison asked. Inside the system's star. The central mind is hiding in the solar corona, protected by layers of machinery. If we could destroy it, the entire fleet would shut down. Morrison looked at her tactical display. The star was surrounded by thousands of Devourer defenders. Any ship trying to reach it would have to fly through the corona itself, while under constant attack. It was beyond impossible. How many ships would it take? She asked. Everything we have left, Chung replied. And even then, only one ship might make it through. Morrison looked around her bridge. Her crew was tired and scared, but their eyes still held determination. They had come this far. They had saved so many lives. Could they make one final push? She thought about the Villani children safely aboard the refugee ships. She thought about the billions of other beings across the galaxy who would live because humanity had answered a desperate call for help. All ships, she broadcast to the remaining fleet. We have one chance to end this. The target is inside the star itself. It's a suicide run through the worst hell you can imagine. Anyone who wants to transfer to a refugee ship, now is your time. She waited for responses. Ship after ship checked in, and not one captain requested transfer. The good fortune, its hull scarred and its engines running on emergency power, was still in the fight. Steve Rodriguez had his family around him on the bridge. Maria was keeping the engines running with spare parts and willpower. Alex and Sophie were helping coordinate the refugee ships. "Dad," Sophie said quietly, "we might not make it home." Steve looked at his daughter, then at his son and wife. His family had risked everything to save strangers, and he had never been more proud of them. "We're already home," he said. "Home is where your family is and where you do the right thing." The final assault began. The last 800 human ships formed up for one desperate charge toward the star. They flew through a storm of enemy fire, their hulls glowing from heat and battle damage. Behind them, thousands of Villani ships carried the survivors to safety. The elegant crystal vessels sang a haunting song of gratitude that echoed across space. They would remember. They would tell their children and their children's children about the humans who flew into hell to save them. Admiral Morrison watched her fleet disappear into the star's deadly embrace, one ship at a time. Each death brought them closer to their target. Each sacrifice saved a species from extinction. The final battle for the soul of the galaxy had begun. Captain Amanda Foster commanded one of the last 3 human ships still flying toward the star. Her destroyer USS Thunder had lost half its hull and most of its weapons, but her engines still worked. Behind her flew the corvette Stardancer and the cargo ship Good Fortune. 3 ships against 1,000 devoured defenders. Amanda looked around her bridge. Her navigator Paul Green had a bandage over his left eye from where flying metal had cut him. Her weapons officer Jenna Davis was bleeding from a head wound but still working her controls. Her engineer Carlos Morales had been running on coffee and determination for 18 hours straight. "Anyone who wants to transfer to the Good Fortune, speak up now," Amanda said. "They're taking refugees to safety." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Amanda smiled. She thought about her daughter Katie, safe back on Earth. Katie was only 12 years old and wanted to be a pilot like her mother. Now Katie would grow up in a galaxy where people knew that humans kept their promises. "All right then," Amanda said. "Let's finish this job." The 3 ships entered the star's outer atmosphere. The heat was incredible. Their hulls began to glow white-hot, and warning alarms screamed throughout the ships. The solar plasma was thick around them like burning soup. Devourer defenders swarmed toward them. Dozens of machine ships, each one bigger and more powerful than anything humanity had built. The Thunder's remaining weapons fired again and again, but there were too many enemies. The Stardancer died first. Captain Lucy Walsh and her crew of 30 volunteers disappeared in a ball of fire and plasma. But their sacrifice cleared a path. For the other 2 ships, the Good Fortune was next. Steve Rodriguez felt his ship shaking apart around him. The cargo hold was full of Villani refugees, and the passenger compartments held human survivors from other destroyed ships. Over 300 people depended on him. "Maria," he called to his wife in the engine room, "how much longer can we hold?" "Together? Maybe 10 minutes," Maria replied. "The hull is melting." Steve made a decision. He opened a channel to the Thunder. "Amanda, we're transferring everyone to your ship. The Good Fortune is done for." "Steve, my ship is in just as bad shape." "We won't make it either." "Then we'll make it together." Steve flew the Good Fortune as close to the Thunder as he could. In the burning atmosphere of the star, with enemy fire all around them, the 2 ships connected their airlocks. 300 refugees and survivors moved from the dying cargo ship to the barely living destroyer. Alex and Sophie Rodriguez were among the last to cross over. They looked back at their family's ship, their home for 17 years, as it began to break apart. "It's okay," their father said. "Home isn't a place. Home is the people you love." The Good Fortune exploded behind them, taking a dozen devourer ships with it. Steve Rodriguez and his family were now aboard the Thunder, the last human ship flying toward the target, deep inside the star, past layers of burning plasma and magnetic storms. The Devourer's central intelligence waited. It was an artificial mind older than human civilization, created by a species that had died out millions of years ago. It had consumed thousands of worlds and billions of lives, but it had never encountered anything like humanity. The Central Intelligence tried to understand what it was seeing. These creatures fought with no hope of victory. They died for beings they had never met. Their tactics made no logical sense. For the first time in its existence, the Central Intelligence felt something new. Uncertainty. The thunder pushed deeper into the star. Its hull was melting away layer by layer. The bridge was like an oven, and the crew had to wear heat suits just to stay alive. But they kept going. Target acquired, Jenna Davis announced through her helmet radio. Dead ahead, 5,000 meters. Amanda could see it now. A massive structure of metal and crystal, floating in the heart of the star like a mechanical planet. This was the brain that controlled every devourer in the galaxy. All remaining power to forward weapons, Amanda ordered. This is our only shot. The Thunder's last missiles launched toward the target. At the same moment, a dozen Devourer defenders opened fire on the human ship. The Thunder began to come apart, its hull peeling away like burning paper. Amanda felt the ship dying around her. The bridge was filling with smoke and sparks. But the missiles were still flying toward their target. Did we hit it? She asked. Direct hit, Paul Green reported. The structure is breaking apart. Amanda smiled as her ship exploded around her. Her last words echoed across the galaxy. For those who can't fight for themselves? The death of the Central Intelligence sent shockwaves through every devourer in the galaxy. Without their guiding mind, the machines simply stopped. Millions of mechanical killers became lifeless metal, drifting in space like abandoned toys. The war was over. 6 months later, Earth held a memorial service for the crews who had answered the Villani call. The ceremony took place in the Great Plaza outside Defense Command, under a sky filled with ships. Villani vessels of living crystal reflected the sunlight in colors that humans had no names for. Prime Resonance Kelvang spoke at the ceremony. Her musical voice was translated for the billions of humans watching around the world. Today we gather to remember those who showed us the true meaning of courage, she said. Humanity came to save us when we had given up hope. They flew into certain death because they believed no one should die alone. The crowd was silent as she continued. We Villani are artists and dreamers. We create beautiful things and explore the wonders of space. But we never understood true strength until we met humanity. True strength is not in weapons or shields. True strength is in the willingness to stand for others when all hope seems lost. In the crowd, Maria Rodriguez stood with her children Alex and Sophie. They wore black clothes and held pictures of Steve Rodriguez, who had died with Captain Foster, aboard the Thunder. Beside them stood thousands of other families who had lost loved ones in the battle, but they were not alone. Villani families stood with them, holding pictures of their own lost loved ones. The two species had become bonded by shared grief and gratitude. The humans have taught us something precious, Kelvin continued. They have shown us that the greatest victory is not in defeating your enemies. The greatest victory is in saving those who cannot save themselves. After the ceremony, changes began across the galaxy. Species that had been suspicious of each other for centuries started working together. The Villani shared their crystal-growing technology to help rebuild the human fleet. The logical Zenthari began to study human emotion, trying to understand how feelings could lead to such courage. New laws were passed by the Galactic Council. Any species in distress could call for help, and others were bound by honor to respond. The law was called the Human Protocol. Deep in space, automated beacons began broadcasting a message in 1,000 languages. The message was simple but powerful. If you are lost, if you are afraid, if you need help, call for humanity, they will answer. On Earth, children learned the story of the Villani rescue in school. They learned about ordinary people who became heroes when others needed them. They learned that the most important question you could ask was not, "What's in it for me?" but, "How can I help?" Alex Rodriguez, now 8 and in training to be a pilot, often looked up at the stars and thought about his father. Steve Rodriguez had been a simple cargo hauler who chose to risk everything for strangers. But his choice had changed the galaxy. In the end, that was humanity's greatest gift to the universe. Not their weapons or their technology, but their simple belief that everyone deserved to be saved. They had shown the galaxy that the strongest species was not the one with the biggest guns, but the one willing to use those guns to protect others. The Villani never forgot. In their crystal cities, they built monuments to human courage. They sang songs about the Deathworld species that sailed into hell to save them. And they taught their children that somewhere among the stars there were people who would always answer when someone called for help. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or traitors, but as the species others could count on when darkness came. They were the ones who answered the call, no matter what the cost, and across the stars, that was enough.